Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 395 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the Second Amendment podcast that is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weird, and tonight I am joined by the greatest hostess in the known universe, Aaron Paulette. How you doing, Aaron?
The horrors persist, and so do I, although I don't know for how much longer. I want to give a special shout-out to my favorite listener, Nissa Woods. She knows why.
I'll shout out to her, too. She sends me images of ducks.
We love you, Nissa.
Actually, this weekend we took the Machad family to our place in New Hampshire, and Ryan decided that he wanted to record a podcast in the woods down by the river, and so we did, and I just finished editing that podcast today, and it sounds pretty good. He wanted to have the river sound in the background persistent, but I had to take it out because it was either our voices or the river. But at some point in the middle of the show, a pair of mallards fly down the river and ducks. It's very exciting. How you doing, Aaron?
You already asked.
I know.
Last week was really rough for me. In addition to the usual things we talked about, my mom has been having health issues. And something I've been saying fairly often is I really hate it when she acts her age. She's going to be 87 next month, and most of the time she seems like she's, like very sprightly 70s. But, and I don't know if, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, the week before last, I had to take her to an emergency room. I don't know if I talked about that last week or not. Oh, okay. Well, she had, a bunch of things. Wow, the words are not wanting to come out. Basically, I figured that what was going on wasn't a single thing, but just a confluence of things. I could tell, for the past week she'd been sick. And she'd also been fairly susceptible to cold recently because, the last time she took a bath and didn't dry her hair and went to bed with wet hair, she woke up and she was, freezing and her teeth were chattering and she was shaking and she was cold. So when she comes out after taking her nap again and she's, shivering and not feeling well, but now she's crying out in pain because her neck hurts, and it's just okay. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's a whole bunch of things, but you're clearly in pain, and you have great insurance, thanks to my father's, Army pension. So, I'm going to call it ambulance unless you want to fight me on it. Because Mom's the kind of person where she will not go to the hospital unless it's 10 on the pain scale. Mm-hmm. But she decided it wasn't worth it to fight me on that. And so, took her there and they did all sorts of tests and, they gave her an antibiotic and an anti-inflammatory and a painkiller and things like that. Turns out she had an E. coli infection.
Whew. You had not told us that.
And, it was pretty mild, but, I figured it probably has something to do with Tilly. Mm. But also we did have a neighbor who gave us some lettuce. And, Mom, I thought, washed it well enough. So, who knows? Who knows where it came from? Just if it was the lettuce, you'd think I would have it. But maybe it's because I'm younger and have a more robust immune system. But, I was really worried because, when she's shuffling and shivering and her hand has that palsy shake and she's dropping things. It's like, you're acting your age, and I do not like that. And she's gotten mostly better since then because of all the different medications she's on, but it's not consistent. It's day to day, and I'm sure there is a pattern, but we just can't figure it out yet. For example, on Sunday, she did not feel good, and her legs felt weak, and she would frequently have to stop and sort of regain her balance or her strength or something, and so she didn't think she could help walk Tilly. And all right, that's fine, I'll walk her by myself. And Tilly was a good girl and didn't give me problems. And then the very next day, yesterday, Mom felt great. She had energy. She was back to her normal self. And in fact, she felt good enough to walk Tilly the entire way. I was saying, do you want me to take her? It's like, no, I feel fine. I feel great. And, might as well just enjoy it and get the exercise while she can. And it's like, okay, my back appreciated it. And then today, not quite as bad as Sunday, but again, she's, having the spells where she has to stop. Her left hand, which is her primary hand, is got that palsy shake. And it's just, I don't know what's going on. I just know I do not like this. So, that's been stressing me out. Yeah, hey, another thing I didn't talk about last week was that, I was verbally assaulted by 2 homophobic teens.
Well.
Yeah. And so short version, again, walking Tilly with my mom, and 2 neighborhood kids, and I am not great at judging the ages of people under 30 at this point, but if I were to guess, I would say that they were middle school kids. Possibly the oldest was like 9th grade, and I think the youngest was like 6th or 7th grade. And so, I have recently, actually by recently, I mean for the past several months, I think. Yeah, back in 25, I started wearing, a hat with the Molon Labe Oedipus patch that I had made. And I expected to get a lot of flack about it, living in a conservative and somewhat rural part of Florida. And I didn't get any trouble for it. And in fact, a lot of people I could tell kind of relaxed around me. People who had been kind of just, formal and professional. It was like, oh, okay. And they became a little chattier. And at least one person complimented me on the hat. It's like, okay, that's actually pretty cool. And so last week was the first time there had ever been a problem. And so these 2 children, and just to give you an idea, these are the kind of neighborhood boys who bike around the neighborhood shirtless. Mm-hmm. Now, it's Florida, it's hot. I'm not going to knock them for doing that, but you kind of begin to build a mental picture here. May
I also say it's also 2026. Like, the high performance fabrics are dirt cheap now and actually keep you cooler than being shirtless.
So anyway, they bike past me and my mom, and I don't really think anything of it. And then they turn around and come back, and as they come back, one of them asked me if I like rainbows. I mean, I didn't expect the question. I gave my honest answer, in which I go, they're okay. And then the youngest one just started spouting really vile things. And look, I've been called worse by more dangerous people. I didn't feel threatened, but I did get a fair amount of, God, it's difficult to do this without swearing, but how dare you, you little twerp. And so he was, God, at this point, I don't know what words I can say. But he called me the F word and, some other disparagement. And then he said something about Trump, which I didn't really catch because I was concentrating on what they were doing, not what they were saying, but it was something along the lines of, Trump's going to make it illegal to be gay, and possibly then he would come kick my ass or something. Now look, I'm not scared because, first of all, they're talking crap, and they're children. And also, not to put too fine a point on it, I have a gun.
They were shirtless teenagers, and you were a grown ass adult with a firearm.
Yeah. But I don't know what they're gonna do as a result of their testosterone poisoning, and I've got my dog and my mother there.
Mm-hmm.
So Mom was walking Tilly at the time, and I say, Mom, please, just go home. And I don't know what the children were expecting, but I feel confident they didn't expect me to turn around. I hate the phrase stand my ground, but that's what I did. Crossed my arms, and in a loud enough voice, I said, if you have a problem with me, I'm here. And I didn't make any threatening moves. I didn't move towards them, but it was just, my thinking was, look, if you want to fight, you're going to come to me so that I see it coming, rather than you deciding to bike up behind me while I'm walking and hit me in the back of my head. And so it's just like, okay, you talk a good game. What else are you going to do about it? And there was a lot of, name calling. And at one point, the older brother pulled out his phone and started filming me as if it would shame me or something. And I could tell they were rage baiting me. They wanted me to say something. And either they could mock me or who knows, maybe they wanted to report me to the police or something. And I just stood there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, well, I'm beginning to repeat myself, but the idea was, if there's going to be a problem, I'm right here. I'm not running from it, but you have to come to me. Oh, look, you're not coming at me. Huh, I wonder why that is. Could it be that you're actually little cowards who are talking trash? And then the older one is like, how about you leave? And I say, after you. And eventually he and his brother decided to go home. But not before he had a little altercation with one of the neighbors, who was in a golf cart with her children and some neighbor children. And one of the kids ran his bicycle right at her cart. And I don't think he hit, but it was playing chicken, basically. Now, here's what's interesting is that neighbor, first of all, we are family friends because she has a dog who plays with my dog. Mm. I mean, I joke that Shadow is Tilly's boyfriend. Mm. And Shadow is a big, gangly German Shepherd. And he's very, well, they roughhouse, but he's very gentle when he plays with her. And so, we get along well. She's got 2 incredibly well-behaved kids, which my mom has praised them and her for raising them. And her husband is a Daytona Beach cop. And apparently she knows whose parents these boys are. So she heard and saw some of it, at least. And then they gave her problems. And so she came up and she asked how I was, and I said I was fine. And she actually gave me a lift up to Mom, who thankfully had done as I had asked and was, up the street, oh, geez, I don't know about distance, 100 yards or so. I mean, a respectable amount of distance. And I didn't want to run and catch up with her, so I got on the back of the golf cart and sped me up there. And then my neighbor said that, she knew who those boys were and she knew where they lived, and she was going to go talk to their parents and tell them what happened. And I was just really grateful to have a neighbor who saw what happened, so it wasn't just my word against theirs. And fortunately, I haven't seen them since, but ever since then, if I have to walk Tilly by myself, which I've had to do a few times because Mom isn't feeling well, I have worn my camera on a chest brace so that it basically acts like a GoPro.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it happens again, I want there to be a record of it, if for no other reason than to show the parents. Because apparently when my neighbor talked to them, the parents were like, oh no, that doesn't sound like our children. And it's like, okay, next time I'll film it and you can see and hear them. So, this was my first real encounter with, the not just overt homophobia, but the actual threatening. I didn't feel threatened, but I know that they were trying to threaten me. And it was just like, huh, okay. So that's just something I've been dealing with.
I will just say, going with testosterone poisoned minds is they will do one of two things. One, they will leave you the heck alone because you humiliated them, and they'll just pretend that never happened because you called their bluff, and indeed they were bluffing. Or they will attempt to escalate, which case,
and that's what scares me.
Be prepared, and I would just say I believe you've said you carry OC spray, but
yes, I do.
I am generally somebody who is against OC spray because I feel like the majority of the situations that I have been in my life has been look, I should just be walking away from this scenario, or I should be engaging with deadly force, and anything in between is really kind of wishful thinking, in my opinion. But in this instance, with aggressive and obnoxious children, if they came up behind you and, took a swing
played the
at
knockout
you,
game.
Exactly. Is one of those, like, you would be 100% justified in shooting an unarmed teenager. But that being said, just like how I've said that, the McCluskeys, as soon as they kicked down the gate to their gated community, they were breaking and entering on private property, and therefore they had every right to invoke castle doctrine and just shoot every one of those protesters dead. But I'm glad they didn't, because that would be a very sticky legal wicket, and this is the same thing. But in the event that they come back and are causing a whole lot of problems, suddenly having a canister of pepper spray by your hand, and as a the police officer that did my training course said, I'll just be talking with somebody and they'll just be getting really, really obnoxious, and I'll just pull the pepper spray out and just start shaking it up, and oddly enough, their demeanor changes.
I mean, a cop can get away with that. I don't know if that would be considered brandishing. I mean, obviously it's not the same as displaying a gun, but
yeah, I mean, technically it's not a deadly weapon, so
if they were on foot, it really wouldn't have been that much of a thing. But okay, because look, the small one not threatened by physically at all. This is one of those few things where it's like, look, I know I could take you in a fight. The older one, I'm not sure. I'm out of shape. He's young and dumb and full of testosterone, maybe. Two of them presents a problem. Then they're on bicycles, so they've got speed and mobility. And my big concern was them blowing past me and going after my mom. I didn't think they would, but that was exactly my concern.
Yep.
And so, I worry that they're going to try something, and I will protect myself, but I'll protect my mother and my dog even more. And so it's just like, please don't be stupid. So, hey, if you remember, right before we got started recording the roundtable last night, I said something like, hey, I may need to be called away to talk to a sheriff's deputy.
Yep.
That was what had happened, because I had a really strong feeling that those children were going to go home and then spin it as how I was aggressive and I threatened them, and either, an upset father would come by the house, or they'd call the police and a deputy would come by, or potentially both of them. But that didn't happen, and maybe it's because my neighbor, nipped that in the bud.
Yeah.
So, hey, that's one of the things I said in Blue Collar Prepping a lot. Know your neighbors, because, they are a resource for you. You are a resource for them. When things go bad, you need to look out for each other. And so I'm so grateful that happened. And I'm grateful that, police didn't come knocking at the door. So I sincerely hope that nothing at all happens. And because, like I told people, as far as I'm concerned, this was the ideal resolution to the situation. They exercised their First Amendment right. Nobody got hurt. Everyone went home safely. Would I have preferred they kept their crappy opinions to themselves? Of course. But, they were exercising their free speech. It's not illegal. And they left and everyone went home. And so that's ideal. What I was thinking was, it's the equivalent of, someone tries to mug me. I pull my gun, they decide they don't want to be shot, and they run away. It's like, okay, yes, that is the ideal interaction. Mm-hmm. I'm not harmed, and I don't have to harm anyone else. Everyone goes home safely. I
agree. And also, you did the get inside their OODA loop with the, they thought that they were going to intimidate you or force a reaction. So either you were going to be intimidated and cower, or get obnoxious or violent and make a fool of yourself. And you did neither of those things. And instead you told them what you wanted them to do and stood your ground until they did it, which, like I said, was probably quite humiliating for them, and hopefully humiliating enough that they want nothing to do with you ever again, and they're just going to pretend that this never happened. And again, I see a very, very similar thing to, I have made it a point to, I only speak about the Second Amendment in what I consider left-wing talking points, and how it's affecting minorities. It's not against public safety. It favors the economically wealthy, and then, put all of that together and then point out the fact that, and it doesn't work. And all of that, and how quickly someone's demeanor changes when suddenly they are going from, okay, I'm setting up this move and I'm prepared for this counterattack, and they get something completely different. It is, it disarms them, and it forces them to start thinking on their feet instead of reacting. And when people are thinking on their feet, they suddenly get smarter. and so, yeah, hopefully they got a whole lot smarter on this, either that or from the trouble that they got in from their folks for being obnoxious.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So, yeah, that's been my weeks.
And also, may I also say a big shout out to all of the caregivers and significant others of people that say, get your butt to the hospital. Come on. This needs to be looked at, because I will say that, I got some good news about Dad today.
Good.
But I will note that, one thing that I was always thinking about is, imagine if my parents were divorced or my mother had passed away and all that. My dad would probably still be living in the house that I grew up in. And if he had had the stroke when he was there, it would have been a disaster, because it's not handicap accessible and all of that stuff. But the good news is my father walked from his room in the nursing facility to his apartment, all under his own power. And
wow.
So, yeah. And that is not a short distance. It's probably close to a quarter of a mile. And he did that all under his own power with just a cane. And there was a nurse with them, and the nurse had a support belt that she had her hands in, not to support him, but in case he started going wobbly to, prevent a fall, help him regain his balance. And so that went really, really well. So he's really proud of himself with that. It's looking very, very good that he'll be moving back to his place away from the nursing facility soon. So that's super duper good news.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
That's wonderful news.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yep. No, he's very excited. I think I said, last week I said, Mom put the beds up on risers so you can get easier on it. It's just like, let's go. Just, you want to go? Yes. You want to go outside? No. You want to go to the apartment? Yes. Okay. Away we go. And my mom was coming over to see him. It's like, what are you doing back here? Did you forget something? No. Is your father up the hall? Yes.
So now you're talking like him.
Yeah. No, it's yeah. We have. I wanted her to be surprised with just the fact that him scooting his happy rear up the up the hallway because he was excited to see the changes that we had done. But enough of that. And actually, also on the lines of gun control not working, is the U.S. Secret Service. I think probably everyone's heard about this one because this is a huge news story. Secret Service shot and killed a person who was open firing at people in front of the White House. And it turns out, this person was known to the U.S. Secret Service, and they had been causing lots of problems and had actually been involuntarily committed because of their mental health issues.
Yeah, this guy was definitely. Yeah, I'm actually, I feel comfortable saying this guy was crazy because, he claimed he was God, and psychologically healthy people don't do that. Last year he claimed he was Osama bin Laden. So, yeah, he's not all there, and I'm not really sure how he came to the conclusion that he needed to kill the president. I don't know if it was part of his delusion or if he's just easily manipulated. But can we stop having assassination attempts on the president? And it's not out of love for Trump, for me. It really isn't. But look, the moment he's assassinated, he becomes a martyr. And people on the left who hate him, you hate him now, you're going to hate him even worse when he's dead and murdered. So it's in y'all's best interest to keep him alive.
I did not even know the name Charlie Kirk while he was drawing breath. I really only heard, I'd seen a few videos just in passing and just, it wasn't my thing. So I didn't really pay much attention to it. And all that, but just later I realized, I'd seen that video before. I guess that was him. But yeah, up until he was murdered, I did not know the name Charlie Kirk one bit, and so that says a lot about what assassinations do. And also, again, he's the president of the United States. Whether you voted for him or not, whether you're happy with him or not, he is the president of the United States, and an attack on the president of the United States, attack on a senator, a representative, anybody is an attack on all of the all the U.S. citizens. So, that is part of your representative democracy, and an attack on them is an attack on that. And so, yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And then furthermore, again, this guy was nuts. I'm not gonna mince any words about it. This man had severe mental illness, and now he's dead. And not only did I believe he wounded somebody. Innocent people were harmed because of this.
Okay, someone was hurt. There was a bystander who got hit by a stray bullet and is in critical condition as of this recording, but it remains unclear whether the bystander was struck by the suspect or, during the exchange of gunfire. And they're being cagey about it, but I do know, based on this article here, that the members of the White House press corps were present because a lot of them, the Secret Service told them to get down and seek cover and things like that. So I do wonder if the bystander that got hit was a journalist. So, but this now makes the second assassination attempt that has happened in the proximity of journalists and reporters because less than a month ago, we've got the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So, no, I'm not saying a connection. I'm just saying that's kind of strange. But, this guy, first of all, he's 21 years old. He had just basically started his life. It's a tragedy. So not only was he on the radar, but this isn't even his first run-in with the Secret Service. And because last year he blocked an entry lane to the White House, and the Secret Service detained him, and he had an involuntary commitment because of this. And then the month after that, the Secret Service arrested him after he tried to enter the White House through a driveway, and he was issued a restraining order. So, this is the third time that we know of that this guy had tried to get onto the White House grounds, and this time he had a gun. And so, yes, it's tragic, and yes, this man was mentally ill, and he needed help, and he clearly didn't get the help he needed. But to me, this seems like he was fixated on this, and unless he was physically restrained from doing so, this is where he was going to end up. And it felt like this was unfortunately his destiny, because after the second time, definitely the third time, it's like, this is a pattern. And I feel like I'm saying some words over again, but it is tragic, a 21-year-old who has people who care about him. And so he's dead, and his future is done, and the people who care about him are hurt. And it's because he didn't get the help he needed. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, but there's definitely a problem. And this really gets me in the feels, because other attempted assassins, they chose to do it. And it's like, yeah, you're deliberately choosing an act to be evil, because you know by now that killing is wrong. This guy had such issues. I don't know if he knew the difference between right and wrong. So I've got a lot more sympathy. So that's why it's affecting me so much.
Yeah. And again, this is just showing just how just ineffectual all of this framework of alleged safety we've got, in the fact that it's DC, it's a highly restricted area for concealed carry, and this guy clearly did not have a permit, oh,
hey, he was involuntarily committed. He was a prohibited person.
Correct. And so he also had a gun as a prohibited person. Who knows how he got his hands on the gun? He was at the White House. He was firing it. All these things are against the law. And then on top of that, he was detained. He was arrested. He was committed. Like, at what point are we going to put all these things together and just get the guy the help he needs? Because he's dead now. And it's one of those, like, I have... Obviously, I have no question about the Secret Service needing to shoot him, and I'm perfectly fine with them shooting and killing him in this circumstance. But also, when it comes to somebody who's that level of mental illness, do they really know what they're doing in that moment? Are they really fully responsible for what they are doing? And so, it's not like he's, some predator who's, tracking a person down to do something horrible to them, and all that. And that's their full intent. This guy's likely full intent was absolutely scrambled gobbledygook. And so it's one of those, like, all of these safety nets going on and none of them worked. And that's frustrating. Mm-hmm. And again, shows how worthless gun control laws are and why I've got, no problem with dismantling them. And it also ties into your neighbor coming out and coming to your aid. Because it's one of those, because most people are good. Some people are jerks. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of people are good. That's why I'm fine with just, let them have guns. Mm-hmm. And then when the bad ones prove themselves to be bad people, and in some instances, long before they can legally have a gun, then that is perfectly fine. Then it's their job to prove that they've straightened up and are flying right. So, speaking of ineffectual and horrible gun laws, but some actual good news, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals has struck down the New York City's vampire law. That is the law that essentially said, it's become very, very popular in the post-Bruin world, saying that, unless you post a sign that expressly allows concealed carry is de facto illegal in this area.
I don't think it was New York City. I think it was New York State. Because the ruling was Christian v. James, and so Letitia James is the Attorney General of New York, so I think it was statewide.
Oh, marvelous. Yeah. Okay. That's actually even better. I missed that. Thank you for catching that. But yeah, this is one of those laws that I'm glad it's ruled that way. And it's actually a very, very important decision because, this is unlike most of the laws that are out there. This one's actually a fairly new invention and kind of an interesting take on we're just going to ban guns everywhere unless people expressly say so. I mean, there's certain, there are some states where you can't go over to somebody's house while you're concealed carrying unless you specifically tell them, hey, I have a gun. Is it okay if I conceal carry on your property? And it's, as much as I appreciate property rights, first up, this is all about, areas open to the public, like shops and things like that. And areas that are open to the public don't have every right in the world. You can't put up a no blacks allowed sign. And so therefore the idea that just suddenly, blanket bans on a perfectly legal right, is dumb and is not great. And it doesn't help anybody. Again, you're more risk of being harmed in a place that restricts firearms than one that doesn't.
Mm-hmm. I don't have anything to add.
Oh, fair enough. Well, we'll pivot to the next one, which is this is another great one here, which is some Virginia prosecutors refuse to enforce new gun bans. And so, and this is from the Reload. At least 4 Virginia Commonwealth's attorneys say that they will not enforce Virginia's new assault firearm and magazine bans, which is something that we're actually seeing a lot of going on internationally, because we have reported on that several of the provinces in Canada have said, yeah, no, we're not going to arrest anybody for gun violations. That's silly. And here in the United States, it actually is even more important because, even though you've got qualified immunity and things like that, there's still a good chance that this law may be unconstitutional. And so therefore enforcing it is illegal, and there could be some form of repercussions, maybe not, direct action against police officers, but could be lawsuits against either the Commonwealth of Virginia or against the police department that is enforcing a unconstitutional law.
So there is a concept, and I know that I have discussed it on the show before, but it's been several years, and that concept is known as Irish democracy.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who don't know what that is, Irish democracy is when lawmakers pass a law and the people just decide, well, that's nice, but we won't be fucking doing it. And they just ignore the law. And if enough people ignore the law, you can't arrest everybody. And so it's interesting seeing that play out at a higher level, not just with the populace, but with some of the people whose job is to enforce the laws who are saying, no. How's that Nick Fury quote go? I recognize that the council has made a decision, but given that the decision is a stupid ass one, I won't be obeying it, or something like that. And so I really like this, and it seems to be the outgrowth of a lot of the Second Amendment sanctuary cities and counties that we've seen in the past however many years. And I know that Virginia was one of them where there was, I don't know, was it like half the state that decided it was going to be a Second Amendment sanctuary? So good for them. But the final bit at the end of this article, see you in court, says Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon.
You made me put down my knitting.
Yeah, that's not an idle threat. We just sued Colorado. We'll sue you too.
Yeah, and so that's all good news, and and we have seen the Irish democracy with the marijuana legalization. Marijuana is illegal in the United States per the Supremacy Clause. It is illegal. If you've got weed, you are breaking the law. That being said, let me just say, I have no problem with that. You do you. But also, B, if you're in a state that has decriminalized marijuana in one form or another, and you are following your state rules, your state doesn't care about your marijuana, and therefore it needs to be the DEA or the FBI that comes in and jams you up on that. And there's not that many of them, and that's a lot of work, especially in 50 states. So overall, the idea of, all right, we're not going to comply. Well, then cool, then they have to send in the state police, and how are they going to handle that for the entire Commonwealth of Virginia? So it's a nice little stumbling block. It's also really, really good for people that are, getting affected by these rules, because that's also something we hear a lot in now in banned states is like, the people at the Gun Owners Action League are openly just saying, just don't comply, which is wild, because for the longest time it was, all right, yes, comply. Here's the best way to get around this law. Here's the best way to go through, and hopefully we can, get rid of this law, but we're going to comply. And now they're just saying, just don't comply. That's our advisement. But again, it's their advisement, but they're not saying they're going to take the bullet for you. If the cops come knocking at the door and you've got illegal magazines, or you've got an assault style weapon, you're going to go to jail, and you may potentially go to prison, and you will definitely serve a whole bunch of that prison time before the courts can get around to rule whether you're right or not, if they take the case at all. So it's one of those, it's good to get a little bit of cover for the people that are going to choose not to comply.
Yeah, there are a lot of cases where it would really be interesting to have a decision on it, but surprise, surprise, most people don't want to be that test case. As an example, I really don't like the law that says that you can't carry a gun onto post office property, because, I hate people, and I hate lines, and I hate traffic. So if I have to go to the post office, unless I need to interact with someone at the counter, I will go after hours where there isn't a line, and I will, put the mail in the slot, or I will use the automated kiosk or whatever. But, if no one is there, then that does unfortunately mean if someone wants to prey on people, that would be a pretty decent place to wait, and see if you mug them, rape them, kidnap them. And so I'm not saying I carry at those times. I'm not saying I don't carry either. I can neither confirm nor deny. That's one of those things where I really wish that law would go away, but I don't feel strongly enough about it to make a stink and get arrested so that I have cause to sue for it. So, gosh, people don't want to get involved with the law. People don't want to be arrested.
Oh, yeah.
I can't blame them.
Oh, yeah. No, especially when you see all the cases that the courts are passing on, and even the cases that win, how long they were in limbo for that is, it's not a really compelling argument, for it. And then again, even in such things as cut and dry Second Amendment cases, we've still had our losses. and we shouldn't have, but we did. And so it's one of those. It'd be great if it was a sure thing, and it wouldn't take very long. But it's neither of those things. So not that I would advise anybody to break a law. But if you are an upstanding citizen and you were to ignore a law on the off chance that you get caught, that would be that's your cue to be the test case. And also the people that come up with these gun-free zone rules and all that don't seem to quite understand how the chilling factor that comes with these things. I live within walking distance of my post office. And so for me to be fully in compliance with the post office rules, it means I have to leave my house unarmed. And therefore, for the entire walk to the post office and for the entire walk home from the post office, I am going to be disarmed. And if I want to do other errands in between there, same thing goes with I had to take my daughter to the doctor the other day, and it was one of those like, it'd be kind of nice on the going to the doctor's, possibly going to need to go to the pharmacy where they have, certain drugs that are desirable to certain people that might be willing to kill to get those drugs, and then just generally going around town. But unfortunately, I had to take my daughter to the doctor's office, which meant the first step was show up at her school and pick her up. And, interestingly enough, schools are gun-free zones. So that's it's one of those, from then on, you're disarmed. And so it's the chilling factor that happens from these gun-free zones is absolutely awful. I worked at a place that had a, against rules against employees carrying guns, and that's one of those ones that it's pretty compelling to obey that, because if you get caught with a firearm, you're not going to go to jail, but you are going to get fired, and then the next job that you're at, they may wonder why you're no longer at that job, and so it's one of those things that could follow you around, and so but. For that meant that, I got up in the morning and I had to go down my street, get on the train, ride into Boston, and then go over to where I worked. And for that entire time, I had to be disarmed because there was no place for me to stash a gun outside of the gun-free zone to be compliant. And that's just nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, continuing with nonsense, Bud Cummins came on the show because he's representing the estate of Brian Malinowski, but he is also a retired U.S. attorney, and he had some interesting thoughts on the current shakeup with the DOJ. I am pleased to welcome back to the Assorted Calendar podcast, Bud Cummins. And Bud, you are obviously the attorney representing the estate of Brian Malinowski, and we talked about that in our previous segment. But you mentioned offhand, and I actually, while you were talking, I realized you have a Wikipedia page, and it's not a short one. You were talking about you had got involved and got kind of dusted up in the investigations of Hunter Biden in Ukraine.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting sequence of events. I was working in Washington during the first Trump administration, kind of as a lobbyist, and we had some Ukrainians that hired us to work on some totally unrelated matters, but at one point in a meeting, they asked if I would meet with them separately, and a couple of them, and they said that they were aligned with the prosecutor general named Letsenko, I think his name, and who is basically their attorney general, and that the government in Ukraine had compiled some significant evidence about Hunter Biden's activities with the company Burisma, on the board of Burisma, and that monies had flowed not only to him, but they claimed they had witnesses that Burisma was spending money that was intended for Joe Biden when he was vice president. And so, of course, was not in a position to vet that evidence or have an opinion about whether it's quality. But what their ask to me was, would I approach the Department of Justice and arrange for a meeting, a private meeting, quietly for them to bring the evidence and some witnesses over and present it to the Department of Justice. And I thought that sounded like a fairly easy favor. I figured FBI and Department of Justice would be interested in seeing that evidence and evaluating it. So I started making some efforts to arrange that meeting. It was not as easy as I thought it might be. And you got to remember, this is during the first Trump administration. This is not during the Obama administration, but this was during the time when the people staffing DOJ and FBI were still the same people that fueled the fake Russian collusion investigation, the Jim Comeys, the McCabe's, and what ended up happening is I ended up reaching out to the U.S. attorney for several reasons. I chose to contact the U.S. attorney who was in the Southern District of New York, and I was acquainted with him, and I pitched it to him and said, "Here's what they want to do. What do you want? What do you think?" And he said, "Well, I'll run it up the flagpole and I'll get back to you." And then he never did get back to me and ignored subsequent efforts by me to follow up and see if they wanted to have the meeting. So at some point I let it die. And this all happened before Rudy Giuliani was in the news talking about roughly the same kind of evidence and the same, referencing that there were people in Ukraine with the same kind of evidence. That all came, several months later into the next year. And then the impeachment of Donald Trump over similar issues happened later the next year. This was all before any of that. I'd never heard of Hunter Biden impeachment until these people approached me. And so nothing came of it. And I never really understood why. But then subsequently, I got notices that the FBI had subpoenaed my record from Google and Apple and various places. And so they didn't want to investigate alleged, but they did investigate me for offering it to them. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
So was there any fallout from you on that, or did it just end quietly?
I'm still breathing free air, so I guess there was no real fallout except, and honestly, I've said many times, I didn't really have a problem with the idea that they might want to look at my emails and my phone calls to see who I was talking to, because there was some suspicion at that time that there was, Russian interference in elections and things like that. And they might have wanted to see, was I really working indirectly for some Russians that were trying to inject this evidence or maybe falsify evidence or whatever. That part doesn't really bother me. What bothers me is they didn't actually want to see the evidence and they turned a blind eye to it. I would think that they would have investigated both.
Yep.
But they didn't. They just buried it. And I've never gotten a complete answer, in spite of all the revelations since about things that have gone on at FBI. I've never gotten a clear read back on what who killed that or why. But I suspect it's just all rolled up. I mean, they were very busy burying investigations in those days of Hillary Clinton's emails and the Clinton Foundation and other things. So I guess this just went on that pile.
Yeah. So yeah, did you ever end up recovering exactly what, say Hunter Biden was actually doing with the Ukraine energy company, despite?
No, I never gained access or wanted to. I didn't presume that I needed to be involved in that. I wasn't carrying a DOJ credential anymore. I thought that the people who did should evaluate it. And I made it very clear to them. I had no idea if it was real or not, but that's what investigations are about. You go look at it and you make your own, judgments about the legitimacy of the evidence, but they didn't even want to see it. And, I thought that was pretty incredible at the time. And now looking back in history and all the things we know now, I guess it was just part and parcel of what was going on. It's a big part of why now I'm so concerned about the credibility of the Department of Justice and the need to really rebuild it from the ground up to restore some credibility and change the culture there.
Actually, that's an interesting pivot. So, what would you do? Say you're king for a day, I guess. I don't know what position, or you're an advisor to the president over the DOJ. What would your suggestion be?
Well, I can just tell you this: when I was up for confirmation as a United States attorney, as presidential appointment with Senate confirmation, one of the prerequisites was I had to fly to Washington, meet one-on-one with John Ashcroft, who was then the attorney general. And, he was a career politician. He'd been a governor. He'd been a senator. He looked at my resume. He saw that I'd been a candidate for Congress, and I'd been the counsel to the Bush campaign in Arkansas, and I'd been to the Florida recount. And, so I had a very political background. And he had my resume in his lap, and he looked me in the eye and he said, "Bud, I've researched the history of the Department of Justice, and every time that there's been a scandal here, it's because somebody lost track of the line between what the Department of Justice is tasked to do and politics." And he said, "You've got a very political background." He said, "As you know, I have a political background too. But," he said, "if you're going to work here, you got to understand we don't do politics here. And if you can't make that distinction, you won't be here very long." And I don't know if you know much about John Ashcroft. He's a very entertaining, very likable guy, but he can be like a mean football coach too. And he was looking me in the eye in a way that I knew he meant what he said. And his leadership while I was in the Department of Justice reinforced that all the time. Frankly, when Alberto Gonzales succeeded him, that changed a little bit. He thought that his job was just to facilitate whatever Karl Rove's shop in the White House and some of the political consultants. And then you jump over into the Obama administration and the Biden administration, and things just get worse and worse till you get to the Russian collusion fiasco. So I would go back to the John Ashcroft approach and make that the main culture piece at the Department of Justice.
No, I think that's a great statement. Politics can often ruin anything. And of course, obviously, we're speaking a lot of conservative-oriented politics, but I think this goes across for both sides, is that when you're the Department of Justice, you should be enforcing the law, and enforcing the law shouldn't matter where you stand politically on matters. It should just be standing on where you are in the law.
Absolutely. When I was United States Attorney there, this Arkansas is a red state now, but it was a blue state. It was changing over right then, but it had been, Bill Clinton was from here, and he had held together the Democrat machine much longer than most states around us had. And so this was still a very blue state in those days. And I was frankly, a lifelong Republican conservative, and I had, bias against some of those Democrat longtime office holders who I thought a few were blatantly corrupt. Mm-hmm. And man, I couldn't wait to be U.S. attorney, but that didn't give me a license to just go after those guys. And in a few cases, evidence came up that gave us a legitimate basis to initiate investigations into some of them. And I'd be lying if I didn't say I was happy to prosecute a couple of them but we didn't in most of those cases because we didn't have a case to make.
Yep.
And so, you don't pretend like you don't have political, that politics doesn't enter your mind, or you don't have your own political philosophies, but you can't take that with you. We give the U.S. Attorney, the FBI, ATF, DEA, on, IRS, we give them such immense powers to ruin people's lives, just ruin your life without even convicting you, just sending you a grand jury subpoena, certainly indicting you and making you face charges. It ruins people's lives. And you and I have talked about the Brian Malinowski case, the power to go execute search warrants in people's homes in the dark of the night. I mean, these are massive powers. And I thought my job as U.S. attorney when I started was to go out and be a crime fighter and try to make the FBI think I was their hero. And I was, going to go out and lead the way for all these federal agencies to be the best crime fighter I could possibly be. But at this stage of my life, I realized I had it all wrong. And I frankly had figured it out by the time I left the U.S. Attorney's office. That wasn't my job at all. The president put me there knowing that we've given all these immense powers to federal law enforcement, my job was to protect everybody from those guys and make sure that they didn't cross the line and they didn't go overboard like they did in Brian Malinowski's case. That's the job of the presidential appointed United States attorney in each of the 94 districts in the country. And they don't teach that to new U.S. attorneys, and they should.
I mean, that is a powerful statement. And again, we say on the Assorted Calibers podcast that the Second Amendment is a nonpartisan issue, and the law should be a nonpartisan issue too. So, I mean, that is a great sentiment. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Bud Cummins.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
May I just reiterate again, I was kind of a little like, I let him know we're not a partisan show, and obviously he is a very unabashed Republican, but I was worried that things were going to get a little bit more partisan for our listeners who are not Republican and are not as interested in that, but I felt we got to a very nonpartisan part. Is again, the rules of, especially when it comes to the law, take the politics out of it. The law is written, and just follow it. It's not, the law is not left wing or right wing.
Well, I mean, the law, capital L, is not. Unfortunately, some laws, little l, are.
I mean, that is true.
I hate this current political culture we have of, as long as it screws our opponent, then we're fine. Because not only is that petty, but to me, it shows a willful short-sightedness. Because, what, you're just assuming you're going to be in power forever? Take a moment. What will happen with this law when, not if, when, your political opponents come into power? But it feels like people are more concerned with scoring short-term points rather than thinking about, the long-term effects of actually having to live with each other in this country.
Mm-hmm. And there's a tough thing, actually. Ryan and I were talking politics, and Ryan's like, oh, I could never do a political podcast because I'm such a walking contradiction on my political views. And I pointed out the fact that, no, it's actually the other way around. The people who are entrenched in one party or another are a walking contradiction, of themselves. I will, just for the sake of not getting too deep into the political weeds, point out, gun control. It is pretty much heavily pushed by Democrats in this country. It is also heavily pushed against people that Democrats claim to be standing up for. And so that is, that's not you're going through. Queer rights are lean Democrat. Why? Because Republicans are after them. But does that mean that, just because you're gay, you're a Democrat? No. Just because you're trans means that you're a Democrat? No, it doesn't. But the Republicans going against you sure is helping. And so, the politics, the political partisanship is nothing but contradictions, and just absolutely, like, it should be laughable if it wasn't so scary. And really what we need to do is just we want to just make everything a better place and just live together and be happy. And that's not left wing or right wing. And really, it's a little bit of both. And that's also what I like to do here for the Assorted Calibers podcast, is I like having this being a nonpartisan podcast. There's so many libertarian and conservative podcasts out there, and I don't want to be anti-libertarian or anti-conservative or Republican in this podcast, but I also want this to be a welcoming place for those of you who are left of center to come in and say, look, we're all fighting for the same thing. And why would we not want to be, gun-owning Republicans shoulder to shoulder with gun-owning Democrats when it comes to fighting for our Second Amendment rights?
Yeah, I don't know if I can find the screenshot anymore, but I remember an exchange on the Twix. Some 1 or 2 months ago, and I dearly hope it was satire, but I don't think it was. And there was some guy who was acting like he was raging far right-wing, and he was talking about how, yes, you should absolutely prevent queer people from owning guns because they're crazy and so on and so forth. And one of the replies was, okay, sure. And then by that logic, people can use it against you. And he apparently said with, well, I can't really say he said it with a straight face because this is text-based, but it was one of those, no, they can't, because the Second Amendment protects normal people like me, not deviants like them. And I was just, either you don't know how the people are defined, or you're just being willfully, misinterpreting it. It's just, I really, really hope this guy was rage baiting and didn't actually think that, because that's not how the country works, and years of schooling have failed you if you truly believe that's how it is.
Yeah, and also, if you're going to be going after the quote-unquote not normal people, how long before you're declared not normal? Because ain't none of us are normal. It's just a question of, we're only normal if you look at us in a certain way.
Spring has sprung, and so David is here to talk about his wood.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. In a previous episode, I went over small-scale indoor container gardening. In this segment, I'd like to talk about the next step up, outside gardening in raised beds. With a larger property, it's more feasible to put some of that land in cultivation to grow our own food crops. However, with smaller properties, that might be more challenging. An alternate consideration may be small raised beds, container gardening, or a combination of both. It doesn't take much time, effort, or money to increase our food independence. Raised beds are available in kit form, both in-ground and freestanding. However, they can also be made from a variety of purchased, found, and scrap materials. Just be careful if using treated lumber that the beds are lined with a barrier material. The ingredients found in pressure treatment chemicals are generally quite toxic. Our first house was on less than half an acre of property, which included the house, garage, and an outbuilding. There wasn't all that much space for a large garden. In addition, the property was on clay, so it would have taken a lot more work to get plants to grow well in the ground. So, we decided on raised beds. The first raised beds my wife and I built were made from 3-inch by 5-inch by 8-foot treated landscape timbers. These timbers cost about $3 each at the time, and each 4-foot by 8-foot bed took 12 of them. The process, while somewhat labor-intensive, was fairly simple. We learned better practices as we went. First, we dug out and leveled the ground to about the depth of one layer of landscape timber and about 6 inches clearance around the outer edges. In the bottom of this, we placed a layer of heavy-duty anti-weed fabric. This material allows water to flow through, but helps prevent plants from growing up from underneath the garden. On top of the anti-weed fabric, we placed a layer of coarse gravel to help with drainage. Then I started to assemble the bed itself from the landscape timbers. The beds were made from full 8-foot lengths on the sides and half lengths on the ends. The layers were held together with countersunk lag bolts, but rebar can be used as well. Once the frames were assembled, the inside was lined with a double layer of plastic sheeting to help isolate the soil from the chemicals in the wood. The outside space was filled in with spoil from digging out the site. The beds were then filled with garden soil. We had that delivered and dumped on a large tarp next to the beds to save both money and time. Once the beds were filled and leveled, we covered the top with a lighter anti-weed fabric. Cuts were made in the fabric just big enough to plant through. While we generally didn't do this next step on our raised beds, adding a layer of mulch on top of the fabric can help with water retention and plant protection. Over the 12 years we lived at that house, we increased the number of raised beds from 2 to 4, and when we sold the house almost 10 years ago, they were still in good shape. As far as I know, the current owner of the home is still using them. We also made a smaller raised bed with field and cobblestone border that we used for an herb garden. We called it Stonehenge. I couldn't even guess how many pounds of onions, tomatoes, both sweet and hot, cucumbers, etc. we grew in those gardens. Not to mention all the dill, oregano, parsley, basil, etc. from the herb garden. As an added bonus, our next-door neighbors at the time also had a garden, and we tried to coordinate our plantings with them to some degree. While there was always overlap between our garden and theirs, we both made sure to grow things the other didn't, and traded produce at the end of the season. We have more space where we live now, but once again we're on clay. Raised bed gardens to the rescue once more. This time we purchased kits online. These are made from cedar, planks for the sides which are dovetailed into corner and side posts. While this didn't reduce the amount of digging required, they are simpler to assemble. We currently have 6 4-foot by 8-foot raised bed gardens, as well as a couple 1-foot by 8-foot sections along the fence lines. As some of these have been in the ground for nearly a decade, the wood is starting to break down. We're considering replacing the ones in the worst condition with a different style of raised bed made out of galvanized metal. We generally leave one bed fallow every year on a rotating basis to help maintain the health of the soil. In addition, we try not to plant the same crops in the same bed 2 years in a row. For those on Facebook, there's a raised bed group where people share tips and tricks as well as success and failure stories. There's always more to learn. Watch this space for future spring-related segments. Good luck and good planting.
But there's one thing that makes spring complete for me, and makes every Sunday a treat for me. All the world seems in tune on a spring afternoon when we're poisoning pigeons in the park.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments, or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weird will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brenna Bach and David Bach. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
You know, I hadn't thought about it. That's a good call on the pressure-treated wood. Overall, pressure-treated wood doesn't rot because it's toxic to like mold and bacteria. So just nothing can eat it. So therefore nothing does. And I actually asked David before the show if he had known. I know that we were always told to be very, very careful with pressure-treated wood. Like if you got a splinter, that was something you needed to take a really close look on, that you weren't getting essentially poisoned by the piece of wood stuck in your skin. But I asked, is there evidence that it does actually leach into the soil? And David said, yeah, it absolutely does. So, good idea on putting a barrier between the wood and your soil. Also, David didn't mention it, but I knew somebody who grew roses, and roses are very, very sensitive, especially to the harsh winters. And they had them on in planter pots that they had put essentially on furniture dollies. And so when the weather was going to get cold, they would actually wheel them into the garage and put a heater on.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It was a nice little setup where it's one of those, again, when you're dealing with, raised beds and flower pots, they go through water a lot faster because the heat and the evaporation, but it also, the soil warms up so much faster, and so you can get stuff to grow really, really quickly. My dad actually grew a few plants in his garden, specifically in black planter pots, so that it would get much more heat, and you could kind of cheat the cold Maine weather a little bit that way.
I mean, I wouldn't say I have a black thumb, but I just avoid plants in general because I'm allergic to so many of them. So gardening is something that other people do.
I don't have a black thumb. I'm just not very good at it. But I will say that I'm not sure if my tomatoes and my basil are still growing. I'm hoping that maybe they will come to and suddenly be, spring forth fully formed from the soil, but probably not. But my pepper plants are looking astounding, and so I am very excited to see how many peppers we end up getting out of my garden this year. But as a southerner, I've also got a lot of mint, like a lot of mint.
I beg your finest pardon. Where did you, as a southerner, what?
Oh, I heard Alton Brown one time say, when he was talking about mint juleps, that in the South, if you drop a sprig of mint on the ground, it'll overtake kudzu.
Okay.
But it also grows very aggressively here in New England.
Okay.
You're in mid-julep country.
Oh, so you were saying to me as a Southerner.
Yes.
Okay. See, the way I parsed it was like you were claiming that, and it's just like, what's the joke here?
No, yes.
I don't get it.
Okay.
I don't like it.
Them cannons are facing north for a reason.
What are you doing, Yankee Trash? I don't like it. But you know who we do like and don't point cannons at?
Our listeners. I don't know if all of them are Yankee Trash or not, but we thank each and every one of you. But we do have to give a very special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. To our Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast to sign up. You guys can get an early release of the podcast. Plus, we have bonus content for sale there. We have the ACP blooper reels, the ACP film tracks, and the ACP mag dump.
If you are a listener, even if you are a Yankee, you're not trash. Just FYI.
Just me.
Yes, exactly. Just you. Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts. Subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
And I will add that I was actually looking this weekend, and we are in fact back on Spotify. So if you listen to podcasts on Spotify, we're back there. So you can listen to both ACP and the Patreon content, so long as you log in through Spotify.
I don't know which surprises me more, the fact that we got taken off or the fact that we were there in the first place.
Yeah, well, we were there in the first place because I told our distributor to do that. But
okay.
But I think I suspect they pulled us because of some of the music that we play, like David's musical stings and things like that. But Spotify can be weird about
surely that falls under free use.
It does fall under free use, but since they are a music distribution site first and foremost, they have every right to be a little bit more sensitive.
Okay.
They're not suing us, but they don't have to. They don't have to distribute us.
Okay.
But I have a blog, which is weerdworld.com. That's weerdworld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
It's a podcast. It's not radio. I don't know why people say that. It really annoys me.
Yeah.
And you can get more from me at linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
I am a delightful Southern belle, and he is obnoxious Yankee Trash. Our quality is assorted, and so is our podcast. Bless your hearts. Good night, honeybees.
Good night, everybody.